I never thought I'd be the type to work graveyard shift at a roadside diner, but life has a funny way of backing you into corners you never saw coming. After my apartment burned down and my savings evaporated with it, I needed money fast. The ad on Craigslist was simple. Night shift server needed. Starlight Diner, Highway 49. $25 an hour plus tips. Must be willing to work alone. $25 an hour was almost double what any other diner paid, and I'd worked food service before. How hard could it be? The Starlight Diner sits at a crossroads about 40 miles outside of Asheville, North Carolina. During the day, it's a cheerful little spot with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that still plays actual records. The chrome fixtures gleam, the coffee is always fresh, and truckers stop by for the homemade pie that the day shift is famous for. At night, it's something else entirely. I should have known something was off during my interview. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was a small woman in her 70s with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through me. She conducted the interview in a back booth, and the entire time she kept glancing toward the windows as the sun sank lower on the horizon. "The pay is good because the work is difficult," she said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Not physically difficult, you're young and strong, but you must follow these rules exactly. No exceptions, no deviations. Do you understand?" I looked down at the paper. It was handwritten in neat, precise script. Rules for night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Always keep the coffee brewing. The pot must never be empty. If a customer orders something not on the menu, politely tell them we don't have it. Do not offer substitutions. The jukebox will play on its own sometimes. Do not unplug it. If someone wearing all white enters, serve them immediately. They will leave exact change on the table. Do not attempt to give them a receipt. Do not look directly at the customers in booth 7 between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. If a child enters alone, call the number posted by the register. Do not engage with them. The bathroom doors must remain closed at all times. If you find one open, close it immediately without looking inside. At 3:33 a.m., go to the kitchen and turn on all the stove burners for exactly 1 minute. Set a timer. If you hear knocking from the walk-in freezer, ignore it. It will stop. Never, under any circumstances, serve anyone who casts no reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. If the phone rings between midnight and 1 a.m., answer it, but do not speak first. Listen carefully and do exactly as instructed. At 6 a.m., unlock the front door and flip the sign to open, even though it never closes. "What happens if I break a rule?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. The last girl who worked here didn't follow rule number 5. She looked directly at the customers in booth 7. She paused, folding her hands. "We found her 3 days later, walking along Highway 49. She couldn't remember her own name. She still can't, as far as I know. She's in a facility now. I should have walked out right then, but I thought about my empty bank account, the couch I was sleeping on at my friend's apartment, and the fact that I'd been turned down for every other job I'd applied to that week. I'll take it," I said. Mrs. Chen nodded, unsurprised. "You start tonight. Miguel will train you. He's been working nights here for 3 years. Listen to everything he tells you." That first night, I arrived at 10:45 p.m. The parking lot was empty except for an old pickup truck that I assumed belonged to Miguel. Through the windows, I could see the diner was deserted. The lights bright, but somehow not as warm as they'd seemed during my interview. Miguel was in his mid-30s, with tired eyes and the kind of slouched posture that comes from too many late nights. When I walked in, he was wiping down the counter. moving methodically from left to right. "You must be Sarah," he said, without looking up. "Mrs. Chen said you'd be starting tonight." "That's me." I tried to sound confident. "So, what do I need to know?" He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't unfriendliness exactly, more like exhaustion mixed with resignation. "Did she give you the list?" I pulled the folded paper from my pocket. "Yeah. Are these, is this some kind of joke?" "No." He set down his rag and walked over to the coffee station, checking that the pot was full. "Every single rule is real." I know how it sounds. I thought the same thing my first night. But you'll learn fast, or you won't last. "What do you mean?" "I mean the pay is good because this job is dangerous. Not dangerous like you might get robbed. Dangerous in ways that don't make sense until you see them for yourself." He gestured to a stool behind the counter. "Sit. Let me walk you through everything." For the next 30 minutes, Miguel explained the routine. The diner had a surprisingly simple layout: a counter with 10 stools, 8 booths along the windows, a kitchen in back, and 2 bathrooms off a short hallway. The register was ancient, the kind that made a loud ding when you opened it. The jukebox stood in the corner, its neon lights casting multicolored shadows. "The coffee thing is important," Miguel emphasized. "Even if no one's here, keep it brewing. I don't know why, but on nights when we've let it run out," he shook his head, "just trust me, keep it going." "And the jukebox? It'll start playing on its own around midnight, sometimes earlier. Usually it's songs from the 50s and 60s, but sometimes," he paused, "sometimes it plays things that don't sound like music. Don't acknowledge it, just keep working." "What about booth 7? I asked, looking over at the booth in question. It looked completely ordinary.
Miguel's expression darkened. "That's the most important rule. Between 2 and 4 a.m., people will sit there sometimes. You'll see them in your peripheral vision. You'll feel them watching you. Under no circumstances do you look directly at them. Take their orders without making eye contact. Serve them looking at the table or just past them, and collect payment the same way. They always leave exact change."
"But what are they?"
"I don't know, and I don't want to know." He rubbed his face. "The girl before you, Melissa, she got curious. Said she couldn't help herself. She looked right at them one night, and..." He trailed off. "Just don't do it."
"Okay," I said, my mouth dry. "What about the child thing?"
"That one's simpler. Sometimes a kid will come in alone, usually around 4 or 5 a.m. They look normal, act normal, but something's wrong. You'll feel it. When that happens, call the number by the register immediately. Mrs. Chen will answer. She'll take care of it." "Take care of it how?" Miguel shrugged. "She shows up within 15 minutes, talks to the kid, and they leave together. The kid never comes back. I learned not to ask questions." He showed me where everything was: the supplies in the kitchen, the circuit breaker, the mop and cleaning materials. He demonstrated how to use the ancient register and walked me through the sparse menu. The Starlight Diner only served breakfast food and pie, which made things simpler. "One last thing," Miguel said as 11 p.m. approached. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Follow the rules, stay calm, and you'll be fine. Probably." "Probably?" He gave me a wan smile. 3 years I've been doing this. I follow every rule, every night. I'm still here. That's as good as it gets." At 11 p.m. exactly, Miguel clocked out and left, his truck's taillights disappearing down the dark highway. I was alone. For the first hour, nothing happened. I busied myself wiping down tables that were already clean, refilling napkin dispensers, and checking that the coffee pot stayed full. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. And somewhere in the building, something made a rhythmic creaking sound that I couldn't identify. At 11:47 p.m., the jukebox came to life. I jumped at the sudden sound, nearly dropping the plate I was holding. The machine lit up, its mechanical arm selecting a record without anyone going near it. A moment later, Buddy Holly's Every Day started playing through the old speakers. My heart was racing, but I remembered what Miguel had said. Don't acknowledge it. I went back to my cleaning, trying to ignore the impossibility of what I just witnessed. The song played through, then another, then another. All of them were from the 50s, cheerful pop songs that seemed deeply incongruous with the empty diner and the darkness outside. At 12:14 a.m., I got my first customer.
A semi-truck pulled into the parking lot, and a heavy-set man in his 50s climbed out, stretching his back before walking to the door. He looked normal, tired, slightly rumpled, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. I felt myself relax slightly. "Evening," he grunted, taking a seat at the counter. "Coffee, black, and I'll take a look at that menu." "Sure thing," I said, pouring him a cup with hands that only shook slightly. "We've got breakfast all day, and fresh pie." He ordered scrambled eggs and bacon. Nothing strange, nothing off menu. I called it back to the kitchen, which, despite having no cook on duty at night, somehow produced exactly what was ordered within a few minutes. I'd learned not to question the logistics. The trucker ate in silence, paid cash, and left. Totally normal. I started to think maybe tonight would be easy, that maybe the rules were just precautions for rare events. Then, at 12:47 a.m., the phone rang. I stared at it, my stomach dropping. The ancient rotary phone on the wall, avocado green and probably older than I was, hadn't made a sound until now. But there it was, ringing shrilly in the empty diner. Rule 11. If the phone rings between midnight and 1 a.m., answer it, but do not speak first. My hand trembled as I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I almost said, but caught myself. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, female, speaking with an accent I couldn't place. "Tonight, lock the back door at 3 a.m. Do not open it until dawn, no matter what you hear." "Okay," I managed to say. The line went dead. I hung up, my heart pounding. That wasn't one of the standard rules. Did this happen every night? Was I supposed to follow random instructions from mysterious phone calls? I checked the back door in the kitchen. It was currently unlocked, as Miguel had left it. I'd make sure to lock it at 3 a.m. sharp. The rest of the hour passed slowly. I served 2 more customers, both normal, both uneventful. The jukebox continued playing its selection of oldies, the songs bleeding one into another. At 1:33 a.m., the front door opened again, and I looked up to see a woman entering. Everything about her was white. White dress, white shoes, white purse, even her hair. Though she didn't look elderly. She moved with an odd, gliding step, and when she sat at the counter, I noticed her skin had an almost translucent quality. Rule 4. If someone wearing all white enters, serve them immediately. "What can I get you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Coffee, apple pie." Her voice was melodious, but somehow hollow, like it was coming from somewhere distant. I served her quickly, my hands shaking. She ate in complete silence, her movements precise and delicate. When she finished, she stood and placed exact change on the counter, not just the amount for the food, but including exactly 15% tip. She left without a word, and I watched through the window as she walked, not to a car, but simply down the highway into the darkness until I couldn't see her anymore. I checked the chrome napkin dispenser next to where she'd been sitting. In its reflection, I could see the counter, the stools, the kitchen door behind me. The spot where she'd been sitting showed nothing. No reflection at all, just the empty counter continuing on. My breath caught. Rule 10. Never serve anyone who casts no reflection. But Rule 4 had explicitly told me to serve anyone in white immediately. The rules had contradicted each other, and I'd had to choose. I hoped I'd chosen correctly. At 2:07 a.m., a group of 3 came in, 2 men and a woman, all wearing business casual attire that seemed strangely formal for a roadside diner in the middle of the night. They didn't talk to each other or to me, just silently sat down in booth 7. My throat went dry. This was it, the test Miguel had warned me about. I kept my eyes carefully averted as I approached the booth, focusing on my notepad. In my peripheral vision, I could sense them there, could feel their presence, but I forced myself not to look. "What can I get you folks?" I asked, staring at the table. One of them spoke, I couldn't tell which, and their voice had a strange quality, like multiple people speaking just slightly out of sync. 3 coffees, 3 pieces of cherry pie. "Coming right up," I said, turning away quickly. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the coffee pot as I poured. The urge to look, to see what they really were, was almost overwhelming. They were sitting right there. How bad could it be? I remembered Miguel's words. I remembered Melissa, who couldn't remember her own name anymore. I served them with my eyes fixed on the table, on the plates, on anything but their faces. I could feel them watching me, could sense something wrong about them, something that made my hindbrain scream at me to run. They ate in complete silence. When I came to clear the plates, still not looking, exact change was sitting on the table, just as Miguel had said it would be. The moment they left, I rushed to the bathroom and threw up. When I came back out, booth 7 was empty, no trace that anyone had been there at all. At 2:45 a.m., I heard it, a knocking sound from the walk-in freezer. Rule 9. If you hear knocking from the walk-in freezer, ignore it. The knocking continued, rhythmic and insistent. 3 knocks, pause. 3 knocks, pause. It went on for nearly 10 minutes while I stood frozen behind the counter, my heart racing. Finally, it stopped. At 3:33 a.m., I set the timer on my phone and went to the kitchen. When the alarm went off, I turned on all 4 burners on the industrial stove. The flames came to life with a whoosh that made me jump. I stood there, watching them burn, counting the seconds. At exactly 1 minute, I turned them all off. I had no idea why I was doing this, what the point was, but I'd seen enough tonight to not question it. That's when I remembered the phone call. Lock the back door at 3 a.m. I rushed to the back door, but I was too late. It was 3:35. The door stood slightly ajar, though I was certain Miguel had closed it when he left. My heart pounding, I looked out into the darkness beyond. Something was standing there. In the parking lot, in the shadows beyond the security light. It was tall, impossibly tall, and as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was swaying slightly, like a tree in a gentle breeze. I slammed the door and locked it, my breath coming in short gasps. Whatever I had just seen, I was grateful for the warning from the phone call. 2 minutes earlier might have been too late. From behind the locked door, I heard scratching, long, slow drags of something sharp against metal. It continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes. Then, silence. I returned to the front, trying to steady my breathing.
The diner remained empty for the next hour, which I was grateful for. The jukebox had stopped playing its normal oldies and had moved on to something else, a song I didn't recognize, with lyrics in a language that might not have been a language at all. The melody was haunting, discordant, and made my teeth ache. Don't acknowledge it, I reminded myself. Just keep working. At 4:23 a.m., the front door opened again. A child walked in. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing pajamas and clutching a stuffed rabbit. His feet were bare. Rule 6. If a child enters alone, call the number posted by the register. "Hi, sweetie," I said gently, already reaching for the phone. "Are you lost?" He didn't respond, just stared at me with dark, unblinking eyes. There was something wrong about his expression, something too knowing for a child. I dialed the number. It rang once before Mrs. Chen answered. "Booth 3, I said, as Miguel had instructed me. Nothing more. "I'm coming," was all she said before hanging up. The child sat in booth 3, completely still clutching his rabbit. He didn't ask for anything, didn't cry, didn't even blink. I busied myself with pointless tasks, trying not to look at him, trying not to think about how wrong he felt. 14 minutes later, Mrs. Chen walked through the door. She was wearing a long coat despite the warm night, and she carried a leather bag I'd never seen before. She walked directly to booth 3 and sat down across from the child. I couldn't hear what she said, but she spoke to him quietly for several minutes. Then she opened her bag and pulled out something I couldn't quite see. The child reached for it, and as his hand touched whatever it was, his form seemed to flicker, like a bad TV signal. Mrs. Chen stood, the child's hand in hers.
As they walked past me toward the door, I kept my eyes down, but I could see their feet, her sensible shoes, and his bare feet that didn't quite touch the ground. They left together, and I never asked what happened to him, or what he really was. The rest of the shift was quieter. I served a few more customers, all normal, all thankfully requiring nothing beyond coffee and breakfast. At 5:47 a.m., I heard something from the bathroom hallway. One of the doors was open, swinging slightly. Rule 7. The bathroom doors must remain closed at all times. If you find one open, close it immediately without looking inside. I walked to the hallway, my heart pounding. The women's room door was wide open, and from inside came a sound. Wet, rhythmic, like something breathing through liquid. The lights inside were off, and I could see nothing but darkness beyond the doorway. I grabbed the door handle and pulled it shut with my eyes closed, not looking at whatever was inside. The sound stopped immediately, cut off as if someone had hit a mute button. At 6 a.m., I unlocked the front door and flipped the sign to open, as instructed by Rule 12, even though the diner never actually closed. Dawn was just beginning to break over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Miguel's truck pulled into the parking lot a few minutes later. He looked as tired as he had when he left, as if he'd spent his time off worrying rather than sleeping. "How was your first night?" he asked as he walked in. I didn't know where to begin. I followed all the rules. He nodded, seeming to understand everything I wasn't saying. "Good. You'll be okay then. It gets easier. Not easy, but easier." "Does Mrs. Chen know what's really going on here?" I asked. "If she does, she's never told me." He poured himself a cup of coffee, his hands completely steady despite the tremor I could see in his eyes. "I think this place has been this way for a long time, probably longer than she's owned it."
Why don't we just close it down, lock the doors, and never come back? Miguel looked at me with something like pity. You tried leaving yet? I hadn't, but as I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, I understood what he meant. The idea of not coming back tomorrow night filled me with a dread that had nothing to do with rational thought. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, like trying to ignore a bleeding wound. 3 years, Miguel said quietly. I've been trying to quit for 3 years, but I can't. None of us can, once we've started. It's like the diner gets its hooks in you. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I'd just collect my first paycheck and never return. But even as I thought it, I knew I'd be back tomorrow night at 10:45 p.m., ready to start again. As I drove home, the sun rising over the North Carolina hills, I tried to make sense of what I'd experienced.
Part of me wanted to believe it had all been hallucinations, stress-induced delusions from working the graveyard shift. But the weight of the crumpled rules in my pocket, the memory of those figures in booth 7, and the thing I'd seen behind the building told me otherwise. The Starlight Diner was something else, something old and strange and wrong, sitting at a crossroads where the normal world grew thin. And I was part of it now. That was 3 months ago. I've worked the night shift every evening since, following the rules exactly as written. I've learned new ones along the way, additions scribbled on the back of the original list. Like Rule 13, if a customer orders water but specifies it must be from the tap in the kitchen, not the bathroom, add a drop of coffee to it before serving. Or Rule 14, if you find coins scattered on the floor forming a pattern, leave them there until sunrise. The pay is still good. I've saved enough to get my own place again. But Miguel was right. I can't seem to quit. Every time I think about it, about just not showing up one night, something stops me. It's more than fear. It's like the diner needs me there, like I'm serving some purpose I don't fully understand. Mrs. Chen tells me I'm one of the best night shift workers she's had in years. I've only broken one rule, and it was a small one. I spoke first when the phone rang at 12:30 a.m. last Tuesday. The voice on the other end simply hung up, and nothing else happened that night. Still, I don't plan to test the boundaries again. I've started to recognize some of the regular customers. The woman in white comes every Thursday. The occupants of booth 7 appear 2 or 3 times a week, always between 2 and 4 a.m. Sometimes children appear, and Mrs. Chen always arrives within 15 minutes. I've stopped wondering where she takes them. The worst nights are the ones when new rules appear. 3 weeks ago, I arrived to find a new note taped to the register. Rule 15. If you see yourself serving customers, don't react. Continue working as if nothing is wrong. The double will fade by dawn. I saw her last Friday, another version of me, moving through the diner serving customers I couldn't see. She looked exhausted, haunted, and when our eyes met for just a second, the expression on her face made me want to run screaming into the night. But I followed the rule. I kept working. By 7 a.m., she was gone. Miguel quit last week, or rather, he tried to quit. Mrs. Chen found him 3 days later, parked in his truck in the diner's lot, staring straight ahead with empty eyes. He's in the same facility as Melissa now. Mrs. Chen hired his replacement within a day, a guy named Tom who starts tonight. I think about warning him, about telling him that the money isn't worth it, that once you start working at the Starlight Diner's night shift, it gets into your head and never really leaves. But I won't. Just like no one warned me beyond handing me the list of rules and hoping I'd be smart enough to follow them. Because the truth is, even if he ran, someone else would take the job.
The diner needs its night shift workers. It needs people to follow the rules, to serve the customers who aren't quite customers, to keep the coffee brewing and the jukebox playing and the doors closed. And somewhere deep down, in a place I don't like to examine too closely, I think I need it too. The normal world feels thin now, insubstantial. Only during those 8 hours in the Starlight Diner, surrounded by rules that bend reality and customers that shouldn't exist, do I feel truly awake. So I'll be there tonight at 10:45 p.m., just like always. I'll brew the coffee and check the rules and wait for whatever walks through that door. And tomorrow night, I'll do it all over again. Because at the Starlight Diner, the night shift never really ends. Even when you're not there, you're still serving. Tom didn't show up for his second shift. Mrs. Chen called me in a panic at 10:30 p.m. She needed me to train the new hire, a woman named Diane, while simultaneously working my own shift. I tried to explain everything, just like Miguel had for me. I walked her through the rules carefully, made sure she understood how important they were. She listened politely, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. "These are just stories to scare new employees, right?" she asked, smiling nervously. "Some kind of hazing ritual?" I wanted to tell her no, to make her understand, but I remembered feeling the same way. Some things you can only learn by experience. We worked together that night. When the jukebox started playing on its own, she jumped but said nothing. When the woman in white appeared, I made Diane serve her, watched as the skepticism in her eyes began to crack. But when the customers took booth 7 at 2:15 a.m., Diane looked directly at them. I tried to stop her, I really did, but she was curious, needed to see for herself, needed to understand what Miguel and I and everyone else had been talking about. She looked right at them, made direct eye contact, and her scream cut off almost immediately, replaced by a soft whimpering sound that didn't stop for the rest of the night. Mrs. Chen came at dawn. She took Diane away, still whimpering, her eyes vacant and staring. Another one for the facility. Another victim of booth 7. And tonight, I'll train someone new. Someone else who won't really believe the rules until it's too late. Someone else who'll either learn fast or break. The Starlight Diner always needs new night shift workers. It goes through them quickly.
Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them over at the comments section, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon. Good night.